Welcome to Elselah Books podcast. No, today we are tackling a question that seems, well, it seems deceptively simple, doesn't it? What is the best Bible translation? It sounds a bit like choosing the best tire for your car. But when you actually look, you see dozens of popular English translations and literally hundreds of unique editions.
It's not like picking one tire at all.
No, it's more like deciding if you need a sleek racing slick, a heavy-duty off-roader, or just a basic commuter. The sheer number of choices can be, incredibly overwhelming.
It absolutely can be. And that's really why we're doing this. We've gone through the source material, including some fantastic insights from the Biblical Archaeology Society, to build a clear framework for you.
Okay.
Our mission today is to cut through all that noise. We'll detail the main differences in style and content, and even in religious orientation.
So by the end of this deep dive, you should have the confidence to choose not just a Bible, but the type of Bible that's really right for you.
Exactly. For your specific learning or devotional goals.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the biggest difference, the most fundamental one. How the ancient text is actually translated into modern English.
That is the critical starting point.
Because once you get that, everything else kind of falls into place.
It does. You see, the scholarly approaches are quite different on how to bridge that massive gap between, say, ancient Hebrew or Greek and the English we speak today.
So how do we categorize them?
Well, we can use a framework from the scholar Leonard J. Greenspoon. He breaks translations into three very broad categories, all based on how close they stick to the original source text.
Okay, tell us about those three, starting with the most rigorous one.
We begin with what are called literal translations. People often call them word for word or formal equivalent.
Word for word, okay.
For these translators, linguistic faithfulness is everything. It's priority number one. They aim to follow the grammar, the vocabulary, the very structure of the ancient language as closely as possible.
So here we're talking about the heavy hitters, right? The really significant versions like the King James Bible, the KJV, and perhaps the English Standard Version, the ESV, which is a big academic favorite.
Precisely. The huge advantage here is that a scholar, or even just a very devoted reader, can get as close as possible to the linguistic feel of the ancient documents.
But there's a catch.
There is. As Greenspoon points out, this closeness often comes at the expense of intelligibility. They can be dense, they can sound archaic, and honestly, they can be confusing for a modern reader who isn't familiar with the original context.
Wait, hold on. If the KJV is so difficult to read structurally, why do serious scholars and readers still bother with it? Isn't it just, academic window dressing if the average person struggles to understand it?
That's a very fair question, and it really gets to the heart of the trade-off. Scholars use them for meticulous study to analyze original word choices, syntax, that sort of thing. But for the devoted reader, the KJV's style has this sense of antiquity, of reverence. Many find it spiritually profound. But if your goal is just quick comprehension, you pay a big price in reading speed and clarity.
Which is why the next category exists, I assume.
It is. This is where we try to balance that faithfulness with modern clarity.
So what's in the middle?
We move to what we can call non-literal translations with extended vocabulary. Think of these as the meaning-focused versions.
Meaning-focused, I like that.
They try to stay faithful to the original meaning, but they use up-to-date vocabulary and a more flowing style. They'll sacrifice some of that word-for-word accuracy to make the meaning as clear as possible.
And this would be something like the New International Version, the NIV, which is just massively popular everywhere, or the Jewish Publication Society's Tanakh.
Exactly. They feel substantial, but they're much easier to read than the KJV. They are the workhorses of translation.
Accessible, but still scholarly.
That's the goal. And then we get to the third category, which swings the pendulum all the way over to accessibility. These are the non-literal translations with limited vocabulary.
Okay, so this is maximum ease of reading.
Maximum. These are the thought-for-thought versions. Scholars call the technique dynamic equivalence.
Dynamic equivalence.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds a bit complex. What does it actually mean when I'm reading it?
It just means the translator isn't focused on the original words so much as the original idea.
The intent.
The intent of the original thought, yes.
Yeah.
And translating that into modern, everyday language, these versions use simple grammar and a very limited common vocabulary.
So these are things like the Message Bible or the easy-to-read version. They're designed for, casual reading, maybe non-native speakers or people totally new to the Bible.
Precisely. They want to connect quickly and powerfully. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Uh-huh.
While this style is incredibly easy to understand, it does risk flattening some culturally specific ideas. When you translate a dense, ancient three-word phrase into a simple five-word modern idiom,
You get the point across fast.
you get clarity instantly. But you might lose a layer of historical or cultural nuance. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Literal accuracy for immediate comprehension.
That distinction is so important. But okay, once we've decided how the words are translated, the next huge question is, which words are we even talking about?
Yes.
Because when someone says the Bible, they might not be talking about the same collection of books as the next person.
That's absolutely right. The word Bible is really just a container, and what's inside is determined by the intended religious community. The differences are pretty significant.
So lay those structural differences out for us.
Okay, so the foundational text is the Hebrew Bible, which is also called the Tanakh. This has 24 books of scripture central to Judaism.
24, got it.
Now, most mainstream Christian traditions, they take those same 24 books, but they reorganize and divide them into 39 books,
39.
and they call that the Old Testament. Then they add another 27 books, which they call the New Testament.
For a total of 66 books, that's the standard Protestant Bible most people know.
That's the one. But it doesn't stop there. If you're reading a Catholic or Orthodox Christian Bible, you'll find another 15 books.
15 more.
Yes, called the Apocrypha, or the Deuterocanonical books. These are historical narratives, wisdom literature, books like Tobit and Maccabees. And those traditions see them as canonical.
So just by picking a version off the shelf, you're making a huge choice about the scope of your study.
And that choice can go even deeper. Our sources brought up examples like the JPS Tanakh, which sometimes has the English translation on one page and the original Hebrew text right beside it.
Ah, for direct comparison.
Yes, it's clearly focused on the linguistic and academic side of the Hebrew text.
And what about those editions that include books that were historically removed from the main canon? I find those fascinating.
They are. The Dead Sea Scrolls brought a lot of this to light.
Right.
We heard about editions like the Sefer Bible, for instance, which makes an editorial choice to include books like Enoch and Jasher.
And those are mentioned in the Standard Bible, aren't they?
They are referenced, yes. And finding them in ancient manuscripts, like in the Qumran caves, fuels this passionate readership who feel these texts are essential for the complete picture. It just shows that choosing a Bible isn't just about vocabulary, it's about choosing a curated literary collection.
Fascinating. So we have the linguistic style and the actual content. Okay, let's move past the words themselves and talk about presentation, the supplementary material. Because this is where those hundreds of editions really start to separate themselves.
This is where the reading becomes a truly tailored experience. Almost every modern Bible has footnotes, right? But the quality and depth can vary dramatically.
How so?
Well, on one end, you might get a simple note that just clarifies a technical term or maybe identifies a place on a map.
Basic stuff.
Very basic. But on the other end, the footnotes become, well, they become theological arguments in themselves.
Ah, so they become mini commentaries.
Precisely. In a study Bible, the footnotes can be these in-depth explanations of doctrine, guiding the reader toward a specific belief. A literal version might just say, alternate reading exists here, but a devotional Bible might give you a 2-paragraph homily on it.
And beyond the footnotes, there's this huge world of study aids.
The aids are the key differentiator for a modern learner. Editions are just packed with resources, cross-references, incredibly detailed maps, charts, timelines, illustrations.
Full-blown commentaries.
Sometimes, yes. And our sources mention Bibles that cater to very specific needs.
Give us an example of how one of those could really help a listener.
Well, think about the difference between, say, Zondervan's dad's devotional Bible, which is all about practical application for a certain life stage, versus something like the NIV Archaeology Cultural Bible. Now, that one is gold for a curious learner. It has hundreds of historical and archaeological notes that ground the biblical events in verifiable reality.
So it helps you understand what life was actually like back then.
Exactly. What it was like in ancient Jerusalem or Babylon. It enriches your understanding of the context behind the text. It turns it into a living history lesson.
And of course, the digital world has just exploded all of this.
Oh, absolutely. App Bibles often have extensive extras a physical book just can't hold. You get instant access to 3 different commentaries, built-in dictionaries, powerful cross-reference tools. The study aids are often what makes one edition better than another, even if the translation is the same.
Okay, we've broken down the mechanics. Now let's get into the human element. The sources we looked at are full of these passionate, sometimes really heated arguments for and against certain translations. It really shows how high the stakes are for readers.
This is where tradition and modern scholarship really clash. Take the King James Version. Despite its archaic language, it is defended with incredible passion.
And what's the core argument for it?
One of the strongest is historical. The KJV was made in 1611, a time when most people couldn't read. So they experienced Scripture by hearing it read aloud in church.
Ah, so it was designed to be heard, not just read.
Exactly. The translators were deliberately trying to make it sound well. The words, the phrasing, were chosen for their cadence, their rhythm. It was meant to roll off the tongue. That's why many still find it the most spiritually moving translation when they hear it.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned a really surprising defense of its vocabulary, too.
Yes, this was fascinating. One source argued that, contrary to what people think, the KJV's vocabulary is mostly one- or two-syllable Anglo-Saxon words, not complex Latin words.
Really?
Yes, and the reader suggested this structure preserves a kind of built-in dictionary that gets lost in modern versions, which, paradoxically, use more complex academic vocabulary.
A powerful case for the old ways. But modern versions face equally strong criticisms from the other side.
A major fault line in this whole debate is about which original Greek and Hebrew manuscripts you trust most. There's a very passionate, though highly contested, viewpoint
Go on.
that the KJV is superior because it relies on the Textus Receptus, a Greek New Testament source compiled from a large number of manuscripts that mostly agree with each other.
And the critique against the newer versions.
The extreme claim is that newer versions like the NIV and ESV rely heavily on what's called the critical text. This is based on a much smaller number of very old manuscripts, like the Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, many found in Egypt.
So the argument is fewer manuscripts means less reliability.
The argument from that viewpoint is that trusting a handful of documents over thousands creates a corrupted text. Now, we have to stress this is a specific reader perspective on a very complex scholarly debate, but it shows how fundamental this choice is for some people.
It really does. It's emotional and theological. And there's also the constant critique about modern changes to established texts.
The Elselah controversy is the perfect story for this.
What happened there?
When the NIV was updated, one reader was deeply disappointed because the translators removed the word Elselah from many verses in the Psalms.
Why would they remove it?
Because, and they admitted this, they didn't know for sure what it meant.
They just didn't know.
It seems to be a musical or liturgical instruction, maybe for a pause or a shift, but its precise function is lost to time. The translators basically said, nobody knows what Elselah means, so they just cut it out.
Wow.
But the reader countered, very passionately, that if the word was in the original text, it shouldn't be removed just because modern scholars are uncertain. Its ambiguity should be preserved, not erased.
That story brings this whole thing into sharp focus. Translation choices are editorial decisions that fundamentally change the experience. So what does this all mean for someone just trying to pick the best Bible?
Well, if we pull together the consensus from all the diverse views we sourced, the most practical answer came from a seasoned Bible tour guide. And it's simply this.
Yes.
The best translation might just be the one you best understand.
The one you'll actually read.
Exactly. If you're not motivated to read it, or if the language is so archaic you can't comprehend the message, then all that technical linguistic accuracy has no practical value for you at all.
That really is the ultimate takeaway. It all depends on your purpose. Whether you need a dense word-for-word version for deep study or an easy-to-read version for daily comfort.
Absolutely. So you now have a framework. We've looked at the three styles: literal, extended vocabulary, and dynamic equivalence. We've examined the content differences from the Tanakh to the Apocrypha, and we've seen the critical impact of study aids. Your choice really reflects whether you prioritize ancient text proximity or modern accessibility.
An excellent synthesis. Now, for one final provocative thought for you to mull over. Considering that translation is ongoing and scholars still disagree on source texts like we saw with the removal of Elselah, what ancient text or context detail would you most want clarified or restored in a definitive modern English edition? Something to keep in mind as you start on your own textual deep dive. Thank you for listening, and do subscribe to our channel for more.